welcome. Been a while since I've done one of these. I've been off on paternity leave, but it looks like everybody already knows what to do. Everybody's coming in from all over the world. Fantastic. Sweden, Finland, Paris. Hey, Claire, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Lisa, Cincinnati. That's where my wife's family is from. So I actually lived there for 3 years. Glad to have everybody with us. India, New York. All right. Switzerland. We'll get ready in just a minute. We're going to let everybody in, make sure that we have a quorum, I suppose. I'm going to share, let me share a slide real quick. All right. Okay, we're probably, hey Orla, how are you doing? Great to see you. And all the others here. I am curious, maybe I'll just ask one question before we get going. Is this your first Greenlight Guru? And if it's not, what number would you say this is your event from Greenlight Guru? Love to see how many times people have been. And first for you, all right. Well,
See,
welcome.
wow,
We have several
that's
people.
phenomenal.
Somebody sent me an email recently that said I owed them dinner because they'd been to 40. And Kimberly's at 20, so maybe I owe her dinner as well. So this is fantastic. Christopher, welcome. All right. It's okay, Moshi. We don't have to keep track of everything. That's too much data.
43. That's the
Wow.
biggest. I think that's the biggest one I've seen so far. But it just shows what the value of these seminars can actually be if people
Yeah,
keep coming back for more.
absolutely. Okay, we won't belabor it. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Again, we will be letting folks trickle in. So, but in the meantime, thank you for filling up that comment section. All right, I'm going to learn to talk here in just a minute. Welcome to today's webinar, Lessons Learned Avoiding Common Mistakes in ISO 1345 Certification. Claire, if you want to share your slides, go ahead at will. But my name is Etienne Nichols. I'm the moderator. I'll be the co-host for today's session, and I'm one of the medical device gurus here at Greenlight Guru. Just a few housekeeping things before we dive into our presentation. First, we invite you to actively participate. You can see that people are already used to doing this, and that's great. I love it. Please use the chat section to connect with other attendees, to chime in and add your own color. Remember to play nicely and respect the presenter as the expert that she is. I will say, if you have a question that you want us to ask Claire, use the Q&A section. So at the very top right, you should see a Q&A button. That's where you can ask a question, and those are the questions we will ask Claire at the end during the Q&A session. Also, even if you don't have a specific question, what I recommend doing is going ahead and going to the Q&A and checking that out, because you can upvote those questions. So if you see a question that you is really pertinent to you, go ahead and upvote that. We'll try to address the ones that are most upvoted so that we can be the most relevant. I just saw the comment. Yes, I'm still stuck in baby talk. After 4 weeks, you think I'd be out of it, but here we go. One question we always get is, will you be sending out the full recording and presentation slides to all registrants? Yes, we will be sending that out. So watch your inbox for that follow-up email. I will say one other thing about that. Claire plans to have a lot of different links in that presentation. So be sure and check that out, because she is planning to really provide a lot of value in that PDF that will be coming later. All right, at Greenlight Guru, our mission is to improve the quality of life through our work in the medtech industry, likely a shared goal of many of you here today. We host these free webinars to share valuable insights, learn from top industry experts, and to showcase our industry-leading solutions. Our software is designed to help medtech companies bring life-changing products to patients faster, more efficiently, and with less risk. Our medtech suite includes software solutions for product development, quality management, and clinical data management, all tailored specifically for the medical device industry. You can join over 1,000 leading medtech companies that trust Greenlight Guru by visiting www.greenlight.guru for your personalized demo after today's webinar. Now, to introduce my co-presenter, or the presenter for today's webinar, Claire Dyson is the Managing Director at DQS, which is a firm that ensures global recognition and added value through certifications. She is a seasoned industry and certification body expert with years of experience guiding organizations through ISO 13485 certification. So without further ado, I'll hand it to you, Claire. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Etienne. And 43. presentations from Green Light Guru. I think they can actually do the introduction to Green Light Guru probably as well as you can. So they'll be checking to see if you get the words different. So I'd start by just giving a little bit of background about myself. I have had many years in medical device industry, supporting manufacturers getting their accreditation, developing devices. Most of the devices that I worked in were devices that interact with medicines. So they're either delivering medicines or they are like photodynamic therapy. They're interacting with those medicines to have a clinical outcome. And that's actually how I got into medical devices, from a PhD in rational drug design across through the delivery systems, and then helping different manufacturers solve different problems. And that's where a lot of my experience comes from today. And 2018, I moved across into certification bodies. So I started looking at the problem in a slightly different way. And I think it's fair to say that there sometimes does seem to be a gap between the certification bodies and the manufacturers. And what we're trying to do at DQS is really bridge that gap and change the way the certification bodies are perceived. So what is DQS? I think DQS is one of Germany's best kept secrets, in that it is a notified body and a certification body. We actually have over 80 locations in 60 countries of the world. Our global medical device teams positioned all over the world, and we work really, really closely together. So I'm constantly interacting with our team in Australia, and our team in the US and India to make sure that we've got this harmonized approach. And clients from all over the world can really benefit from the expertise that DQS has to offer. Like all certification bodies, the EU MDR transition has been quite tough, and I'm not saying we are in any way perfect, but we are striving to improve, and we're hoping that you would see that DQS difference in the future. Now, the brief that I had for this, and I'm just going to try and advance my slides. Let me try that. Nope. Hang on a second.
And Claire, I'd forgotten we had a poll too to ask where the audience is in their journey. Do you want me to go ahead and do that while you work on the slides?
Yes, please do. I'm just struggling with advancing it.
So I'm going to open a poll question asking, where is your company in its ISO 13485 certification journey? It should be in the, if it doesn't pop up in front of your screen, it should be in the top middle button between chat and Q&A. So we'd love to see you answer that, and just go ahead and submit that. We'll see. Looks like we have about 26 who are fully certified, about 50% right now, and about a quarter actively working towards it, and a quarter planning to start. We'll give it just about 15 more seconds just to try to get as many votes as possible. Thank you for working with us on this. Okay, it's a couple hundred votes in. All right, so it looks like about half are fully certified, and about 30% working towards it actively, and about 30% maybe planning to start with no, those numbers aren't working out, but I'm trying to do the percentages.
Mental math.
Yeah. Okay, very cool.
I mean, that's good to know, because I think now I know that my audience are experts. So you'll probably be finding comments to feedback to me. So the actual brief that was given to me is what's on this slide. You've already seen that when you signed up. I'm not going to read them because we've got very limited time. And what I would say is, either to get all of this done, I have to talk really, really quickly, or I use this presentation as a platform to signpost you to the information they actually need. Now, I'm going to opt for the latter, because although I am known to slip into my New Yorker style speed of conversation, I did spend a lot of time in Switzerland, where they tend to talk really, really slowly. And so I'm going to try and connect with my inner Swiss and slow down so everybody actually understands. One of the things I have discussed with Etienne is whether we could do a masterclass or a more advanced training, and there will be a poll at the end that you can sign up to if you think that could be of interest, to sort of really deep dive into some of these points and aspects. So Before we begin, I just wanted to recap on what ISO 13485 is. So it is an internationally recognized standard for quality management systems in the medical device industry. I'm sure you probably already know that. It's important because it supports manufacturers to ensure that their medical devices meet the strict regulatory requirements, safety standards, quality expectations, and overall help ensure patient safety and product reliability. And achieving and maintaining ISO 13485 certification, it can really help your regulatory submissions, but it's also a competitive advantage. And we're seeing that more and more right across the supply chain, that even if you're not a legal manufacturer, but you're providing a service or a component, that ISO 13485 certification can make the difference between securing a sale or not securing a sale. It demonstrates commitment to quality, also continuous improvement of the processes, efficiency, making sure that your products are consistent. And the core requirement for ISO 13485, they form the foundation of many regulatory approvals around the world. And I think that's one of the reasons why ISO 13485 is so widely recognized globally. And what we're seeing is an increasing focus of regulatory decision makers on saying, actually, let's look more at ISO 13485, how we can really leverage what the manufacturers are doing there to align our regulatory requirements across to that. And of course, we're seeing that in the US, but we're also seeing that in countries like South Africa, where ISO 13485 is now mandatory. So it can also, as I've mentioned about the supply chain, if you are a legal manufacturer and you're looking to establish a supply chain, obviously supplier validation and evaluation is really, really important. And if your supplier is ISO 13485 certified by an accredited certification body, you can use that in your risk analysis to reduce some of the costs associated with supplier validation. So that's something to think about when you're considering your suppliers. So the objective of this presentation is to really drill down into some of the common challenges and best practices to maintain and achieve 13485. I recognise that, in the very short time we've got, that's quite difficult to cover all of the knowledge that you really need within ISO 13485 to really do it well. But what I thought is I would try and give you a taste, some ideas, resources, so that you can then go away and feel a little bit better informed. And then if there is appetite for going deeper into certain aspects, we can do that. So, moving on. I wanted to start by just going through what everyone will tell you. And I guess this is really focusing on the needs of the people who are just starting their journey, and they've probably heard all of this. The ones that are already certified, you've probably experienced this. So pitfall number one is incomplete documentation and records. This is one of the most common things that we see as certification bodies, and that is that manufacturers don't develop complete records, or there are bits missing, particularly around design and development. Because if you're designing and developing a device, it can take such a long time. And the team that were doing it at the concept and the initiation are perhaps not the team that are actually doing the regulatory approval, and there are bits missing. And that can be really, really difficult. I think it's important to remember that without comprehensive documentation of all your processes, your procedures, your product designs, it becomes really difficult to demonstrate compliance and also to maintain consistency. To address this issue, we really say standardize your document process across the organization, regularly review it to ensure it meets necessary requirements. And an anecdote that I will mention further on in this presentation is around IP. Quite often in your journey to become a medical device manufacturer, you focus on that certification, you focus on the regulatory approval, but you're also business. and you've got intellectual property, and that intellectual property is going to be what you leverage to get funding released. If you've not documented your design process in the right way, you might find when you try and patent your idea, it's challenged and you don't have the evidence to really support that it is your IP. So I cannot stress enough the importance of really good documentation. So the next pitfall, lack of top management engagement. This is one that you will hear cited all the way through ISO 13485. They want to see top management right the way up, really engaged in the quality culture, setting the quality policy, setting the quality objectives, and being involved in those discussions. Certification would require, to ISO 13485, it would require full commitment of the leadership. And we want to see that at all the different levels, particularly the senior leadership. And to overcome this, it's really critical to actively engage top management to ensure they champion your ISO 13485 initiatives. And they're providing the necessary support and program success. Ultimately, CEOs, they are responsible for the resilience of your business, the continuity of your business, and that often comes with a dollar sign. They want to see if they're investing, what is the value that they're getting back. If the investment is just to have a 13485 certificate to help you get into the market, that's one thing. But if you can present that certificate as showing how you're analyzing your production to create efficiencies, that tends to really, really win them over. The next pitfall you'll hear often is failure to conduct internal audits. Obviously, the internal audits are crucial for identifying areas of non-compliance, ensuring your continuous improvement around your processes. To avoid this pitfall, I really encourage you to implement a robust internal audit schedule, and making sure that you're really taking a risk-based approach, maybe revisiting certain areas based on the data you're collecting more than once a year, but trying to cover everything within the annual cycle. It's also important to make sure that from those audit findings, you have an analysis which identifies the corrections and the corrective actions. You follow through with those actions, and then you verify the effectiveness at the end. So you're really making that closed loop on improvement. The next pitfall, I would say, is inconsistent risk management practices. So with ISO 13485, risk management really underpins the way of thinking. That's the process, the product, everything is based on risk. And it's really important to make sure that that's consistent across all of the different processes. So risk management, we know it's critical. It's essential during design and production phases. We often see manufacturers doing a really good risk analysis for the product, but they're not really considering the risk of the business, the risk of each individual process, and then identifying KPIs which help them to monitor that on an ongoing. So what we're looking for is to see that your risk management process ensures you're continually assessing risk, you're going back, revisiting it, putting in place actions to mitigate the risk and control it. The last one of the pitfalls that everybody will tell you is underestimating the importance of supplier management. You as an organization are not an island. You interact with suppliers, and your business success is dependent on their basically relying on those suppliers to produce a consistent service or product. So it's really important that you have an evaluation process that ensures that you are getting what you need and you're selecting the right suppliers. You need strong vetting, the right level of monitoring, and thoroughly assessing your suppliers for compliance. Regularly reviewing their performance, but taking a risk-based approach so it's not overly heavy and not focusing on the wrong areas. And that sort of leads me into quality being a science and also an art. And I just want to spend a few moments looking at two extreme examples and what could go wrong or right in different sort of organizations. So to bear with me on these slides because I've tried to do some animations and it might not work. So many organizations, you begin your journey with an off-the-shelf package for QMS. If you've never worked in a QMS environment in a medical device industry, perhaps you've got QMS experience elsewhere, or you're not really confident in ISO 13485, you might buy a document suite. And the next step is to adapt it to your particular circumstance. And I see two extremes, or I have seen two extremes. One is where a manufacturer will take that off-the-shelf package and they will put it in a folder on a nice fancy bookshelf, but they won't actually adapt it to their business needs. And they just bring it out when they're being audited. The other is where they read the off-the-shelf package and they try and implement every single aspect, whether it's relevant to their business or it's not relevant to their business. And sometimes you see organizations that are very, very enthusiastic. They don't want to get a finding. They want their certification body to come in and find their system is perfect. And they invest a lot of time creating layer upon layer upon layer of documentation to be able to evidence to the third-party auditor. And the result is that it's just not efficient. They're spending a lot of money where they don't need to, and they might impress their third-party auditor, but the third-party auditor probably understands that it's too much. So it's really important that you get the balance right and you develop a quality management system that's got enough content to reflect your business needs, but you're not overly burdening yourself. So what does that look like? You can see if you've got a heavier quality management system, it's starting to weigh down certain businesses, whereas the ones that aren't actually, they've just got the off the shelf and they're not implementing it, they feel much lighter, probably spending far less money. So in other cases, I have seen empty files where it normally goes along with the manufacturer who has taken that off the shelf quality management system and they've not really implemented it. They don't really understand what the quality management system is. And it says in the ISO 13485 process, you've got to have a risk management file. So they take a folder, they write RMF on it, they put it on the shelf next to the nice quality management system, and it's empty. And genuinely, I have seen that in manufacturers. And they argue that, well, it just says you need a risk management file. And you think, no. It's not to do with the file. It's not to do with the document. It's to do with the content of the documents. And that's really what we want to see. So, this company that's got their off-the-shelf quality management system, they've got their empty files, they're feeling very, very light, but actually they are at risk, serious risk. And we'll go into that in a bit more detail. So, on the other hand, we see some organizations that actually have excessive risk analysis and they generate documents to cover every eventuality. And this risk analysis is normally the process by which you identify which documents you need. I once went into an organization that had a folder like this full of disaster recovery scenarios. They had a case for fire, a case for flood, power outage, riots, terrorism, meteor strike. I was very interested to know what their risk mitigation, whether they had a direct line to Bruce Willis, I don't know, but they had so many different scenarios of how to recover disaster. Interestingly, there wasn't one for a global pandemic, despite the fact that this audit was pre-2020. So they clearly didn't think of everything, but they had overburdened themselves. And I did think if you were in a situation where there was fire, you wouldn't go and look at 20 different procedures to find the one that you're supposed to do in that circumstance. So I think that you can become too burdened by your own enthusiasm, and it's important to remember to keep it simple, to keep it lean, to make it work for you. So this poor manufacturer is now quite burdened with what they're trying to make for themselves. But it doesn't stop there. I've seen other areas where every supplier is critical, and the manufacturer is heavily burdened by supplier evaluation. So it's really important to have supplier evaluation. It's important for your business resilience, and those measures you put in place ensure the quality of the services and products that your suppliers are providing to you. So in turn, they have an effect on your product quality. If the services and products don't have an effect on product quality, they are not critical suppliers. I have been into organizations where the coffee supplier was critical. And you ask the question, so do you audit them? And they say, well, we did ask, but they wouldn't let us host an audit. And maybe they're not critical. Now, some coffee lovers will say the brand of coffee, the supplier of the coffee is really critical. I would say it's not affecting your product. I'm sure we can have a long debate on what that looks like. But if you are investing time in managing non-critical suppliers as critical suppliers, you end up with really expensive coffee, not the price you're paying, but the time you're investing in validating that supplier. So it's really important to select what is a critical supplier and what is not a critical supplier. This business is getting really weighed down now. The next one I've seen is CAPA that kills businesses. I went into a manufacturer once, and they had raised a CAPA where a worker had inadvertently ripped a label as they were sticking it on to secondary packaging. That individual put 1,000 labels on product every day, every single day. And in their entire history, they'd ripped one. I thought that was amazing. I think I wouldn't have such diligence. And the company had opened a CAPA, and the CAPA actions were crippling production, virtually bringing it to a standstill. Again, you have to think risk. You have to think about the risk of what level of activities you want to put in for the CAPA to make sure that your business can continue. So how can we help you? What can improve and make sure that you are balanced and in the right direction? Some organizations manage by themselves. They have a really robust gap analysis and internal audit program to keep them in the right place. I'd also put forward third-party audits. Obviously, they ensure that your quality management system is on track. Although a third-party auditor is not going to be a consultant, if they're coming from a certification body, we can't offer consultancy. That doesn't mean that we can't challenge some of the ways that you're doing things by asking questions and just help that thought process spar with you a little bit to see how you can make sure that your quality management system is lean and it's effective. At DQS in the US, they've recently launched a gap analysis system. You can, if you're interested in that, the email address is here. I'll also provide that at the end. And this gap analysis allows them to come out and just check that you are going in the right direction for 13485 if you are not intending on being certified, or if you're intending on being certified at a later date. We've also created quite a lot of tools to help manufacturers in preparation for 13485. I also wanted to just spend a few minutes telling you what you need to know that isn't commonly known. So I wanted to start off with the versions of 13485. So there is more than one version or rendition of 13485. Obviously, there's quite a lot of content here, so I'm going to go through at a high level. We have produced a blog specifically on this and also a white paper, because I think it's one of the areas where I see most confusion and most a lot of wasted effort by manufacturers. So if you're in North America, you can get access free of charge to a view-only version of ISO 13485. And this is just because the FDA has incorporated by reference the ISO 13485 requirements into the new QMSR. You can actually get any ISO standard that has been incorporated by reference into the US requirements. You can also buy the ISO standard directly from the ISO source. You can see the prices here are in francs. And this is what I would call the parent level standard. It's the one that's been approved by the ISO organization. But there are different renditions. So ANSI, if you're in North America, you can buy the standard directly from them. Just pointing out, they do have a membership scheme, and if you use the membership scheme, you will get a reduction of the price, but you have to work out if you just want the individual standard or if you're going to need multiple standards, and that depends on where you are in your journey, your regulatory journey. Regarding these numbers here, we do have a white paper on that DQS has produced, and I really encourage you to go to our website and download that, because there is a lot of confusion about what the prefixes and the suffixes of ISO 13485 mean, and I think this is really, really helpful. Then within Europe, we have lots of different renditions, in fact, in each country. I've put here the Dutch one, which is from the Netherlands. They have also this NEN Connect, which is a little bit like the membership for ANSI. It's a platform where you can get different standards and you can get access to the different standards. Just looking at the bottom, again, you can see there's prefixes and suffixes, which are all explained in our white paper. BSI is a common one as well. They're also in English. I should mention I put NEN up, the Dutch standards, because they are in English. BSI is also in English. You can buy directly from BSI. You'll notice that the price is different, and you'll notice that there is a membership total as well. So you can be a member and get a reduced rate. BSI also have a program called Compliance Navigator, where you can get a package of standards for medical devices. I also wanted to bring in Estonia. Estonia is one of my favorites for self-employed people, students wanting to know about 13485. If you are right at the beginning of your 13485 journey and you need access to 13485 standard, just emphasizing the price is an order of magnitude less than some of the other providers. So it's a really important resource. It's also important to note that for European standards, the harmonized version is state of the art. You can see that EN prefix means that it's a harmonized version. That standard has additional annexes which align 13485 with the EU MDR requirements. And so all that work's done for you. So if you have a membership to a provider for standards that doesn't have that harmonized 13485, it's worth picking up a harmonized version, because that annex where it's aligning all those requirements, it takes a lot of time to create, and it's been done by experts, so it's always a good resource to have. And with that annex, you can then use 13485 to link the FDA requirements and also the MDR requirements if you are thinking of covering those two markets. Another tool I really like is MDSAP. So those of you that don't know about MDSAP, it's the Medical Device Single Audit Program. There are 5 jurisdictions, including the US FDA, which are involved in this. It's mandatory in Canada. MDSAP is based on ISO 13485, and then they add in the regulatory requirements of each participating jurisdiction, which means all the requirements of the US FDA are added in to the MDSAP program. So you've got 13485 and then all of the USA requirements in one document. Now, it's not for the faint-hearted, because the MDSAP documents do require a basic knowledge of quality management systems to navigate, but they're great resources. It's all free of charge. It's all on the MDSAP website, and you can get the audit approach, which explains how we certification bodies will come and audit you, which is great for you to then go through in your internal audit to make sure you're covering the requirements, which we're then going to address. It's also, as I say, got that the 13485 base with the FDA requirements, add in your harmonized version of ISO 13485, and you're covering everything you need for 80% of the global market, which is a fantastic tool. Just quick mention of license partners. So some license partners will actually sell standards. So I know some certification bodies do. Also, some test houses will sell standards. And you'll find some of the non-English speaking EU jurisdictions will actually license an English version rather than translating it. So if you do go on different sites and you see the standards there and you think, why is it here? It's because they're license partners. It is worth checking the prices for the original source when you're looking to choose where to buy from. So leaving the standards, moving on to processes. You will need some processes right from the start, but not all of the processes. So if you've done an ISO 13485 training course, you will probably go through core processes like management responsibility, product realization. And just to explain why these two come first, before you can apply for certification, one of the questions we're going to ask you is, have you had a management review? And so people think management responsibility has to be quite an early thing because it's the target to get to that certification application. The other thing we're going to ask you is, do you have a product? Because we can't give you a certificate. We can't audit you for a product if you don't have a product. And again, people would be thinking, oh, I need to get the product. So they're the primary focus. And then document control, risk management, design and development, and supplier validation, which we've touched upon previously. I would say that for your initial processes, it's those four. The reason being, if you're not recording what you're doing, you're not going to get your intellectual property secured. You're not going to be demonstrating your design and development to the level that we need to actually be able to give an approval, or the US FDA needs to give 510K or PMA clearance. There needs to be some data there. Risk management, because you need to take a risk-based approach. You don't want to be expending energy trying to have a coffee supplier as a supplier validation, and you don't want to have a disaster recovery based on a meteor strike. You need to take a risk-based approach and expend your energy where you've got the most risk. Going into design and development, it's really important you know what you're designing to, that you've identified the state of the art, you've identified the clinical outcome, you know what your product's going to be, and you've basically followed that design pathway all the way through, and it has considered the risks of the device or component or service. And then supplier validation, as I say, it's really important to have that evaluation. Now, I'm not saying that management responsibility and product realization aren't important. I'm just saying that they don't need to be there from day one. And really, if you have this focus on those four core processes, engage management by all means, but you really don't need to be doing a management review on day one. You need something for management to review before you do that review. Think risk, products and processes. I've got a quick table that just aligns the 13485 and FDA QSR, bearing in mind that the QMSR will incorporate the 13485 parts. So the risk focus, 13485, it's very comprehensive, it's explicit, there's lots of formal documented processes, it's proactive as well as reactive. For the FDA, where we are at the moment, it's more compliance based. We've got some in design control. it's inferred, but it's not as prescriptive as it is in 13485. So if you're in the QSR now and you're looking to move to the QMSR, you need to think about documentation. You need to think about formalizing your risk process. And there are lots of tools out there. I think Greenlight Guru, correct me if I'm wrong later, has some tools that will actually support you. You know, I really have to emphasize you're not on your own. Lots of people are going through this. There's lots of experience that can actually help you in this journey. Key features. In 13485, there is a dedicated risk management process. I've mentioned the risk management file. It's not an empty folder on a shelf. It's actually content which shows how you're actually managing risks, how you're identifying risks. That you need to do ongoing reviews and you need to integrate that risk management across all of your processes. Obviously, with the QSR, it's more implicit and it's more focused on the design and manufacturing and then the adverse reporting. So with 13485, it's just much broader. Going back to that standards question and where you're going to get your standards from, obviously ISO 13485 is what is referenced by in the QMSR, but actually ISO 13485 then links to ISO 14971 and the definitions come out from ISO 9000. So if you're going to really interpret 13485 correctly, you need those other two standards. It's also worth mentioning that ISO produce a manual of how to implement 13485, and that's another package that you might be looking to buy. So key points are integrate risk management into every stage, develop a risk management file, conduct ongoing risk reviews, and align your business and compliance goals. So knowledge transfer is key. So what do I mean by this? Well, basically, knowledge is really important because it will boost your efficiency. It ensures you're really understanding the ISO 13485 requirements. It's required to communicate to contractors. Now, I really want to emphasize this. I've seen a lot of cases where we've gone in as auditors to a manufacturer and we know more about their quality management system than they do. The reason being they've had a high turnover in the quality department, or they've got an external contractor to come in and put changes or put the quality management system in place. And once they're gone, the knowledge goes with them. Part of your contract with a subcontractor should be that they're training your team and they're leaving you to be able to work independently. If you've got people in your quality team, you should always be thinking of succession so that that knowledge stays within the team. Best practices. Cross-functional training. I'm not going to go into all of these separate points because I think you're going to get the slides and you can sort of read them and consider how you're going to apply them. And I just stress it's really important. Knowledge is expensive to come by, so keep it within your company. So final point, it's not just about compliance, it's about making it work for your business. You have to think of your business requirements and what those business requirements mean and how your 13485 will enhance business assurance as well as providing compliance. It's a really fantastic toolbox if you use it right. If you don't use it right, it will suffocate your business. It will cramp your innovation and it will just stifle you. But if you get it right, it will create a resilient, sustainable business that's a pleasure to work in. So you need to align it with your business goals. There's no point in having a quality management system that doesn't consider your business goals. So in 13485, you can incorporate your business goals. So you've not just got your compliance and regulatory goals, you're considering actually where you want to be, what's your individual business goals as well. It can help with customer satisfaction and retention. Some of those risk feedback loops, collecting those complaints, acting on those complaints can really help customers feel that they're heard and they're contributing to the development of the devices. ISO 13485 implemented correctly can help with operational efficiency and cost effectiveness. It is such a competitive market at the moment. I don't think in my history of working in the medtech sector, I have ever seen such financial pressures. I think it's really, really important that we have this system where you're improving your efficiency. It improves market access and competitiveness. Obviously, you've got that risk management, so you're mitigating risks before they happen. Helps to continuous improvement. I know there's a lot of controversy around saying continuous improvement in medical devices. Devices tend to change very little. Some change more than others. Some have been in the market for years with very little change, and of course, change incurs regulatory costs. That doesn't mean your processes can't improve. That doesn't mean you can't think about new ways of doing the same thing that create efficiencies or incorporate new technology so you can be more accurate. It helps with resource allocation, so you're really becoming a lean and efficient organization. It provides you with the regulatory flexibility and business agility, and it safeguards your brand and contributes to long-term sustainability. Now, I realize that what I've just done is whipped through so many different points, and it's so difficult within this very short time to be able to do justice of any of those points. In this slide, I've just put some links here on what can be there to help you. So if you're interested in certification, you can follow this link. If you're interested in training, and here I really want to see what is the gap of knowledge, because what we don't want to do at DQS is reiterate what our competitors are doing. We want to think about things differently. So if there are any training needs or you're interested in further training, please do reach out to us at this UK email address. We have a number of white papers. Please do look at that white paper on the naming of 13485 so you know you're getting the right standard and you're not going to come up with some surprises later on down the line. We also produce a number of blogs. If you have subjects for blogs or you would like to see us present on a particular area, please also email this UK address and we will see to that. If you're interested in a gap analysis for the 13485 or the EU MDR or MDSAP, please also contact our US sales team. So that's basically it for me. You will get all the different links and content. I think Etienne's going to see to that. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Claire. That was awesome. I know you covered a lot of ground and we have a lot of questions. So we'll get to that in just a second. As a reminder, I know we get a couple questions about that. Today's recording, the presentation slides, all of those will be sent out in an email, maybe this week, probably next week, just so you're aware. But yeah, let's go ahead and get to the question. So the highest upvoted question was around software as a medical device. So I wonder, I'm just going to maybe, it says, please address SAMD. Thank you, Rashid, for the, if I'm saying your name correctly, apologies if not, for that question. Can you kind of elaborate? Are there any specific suggestions you have when the company is purely software as a medical device?
Yeah, I mean, 13485 applies in just the same way. Now, the 13485 isn't product specific, it's medical device tech specific. So when our auditors come on site, and we actually do audit software, but we're auditing QMS software. We're not auditing the product as software. So how 13485 can help you as a software as a medical device manufacturer is really in cataloging the design and the development phases and making sure you've got the right documentation there. Now, some software as a medical device in the EU is self-declared, some isn't, some actually needs third-party conformity assessment. If you are self-declaring, I really encourage you to get an accredited certification, because you as a manufacturer, you're taking a legal responsibility of placing that product on the market. So there are certain obligations. And I think it's really important that you have somebody to sense check your direction and your processes. To me, that applies to all self-declared products. Do get an accredited 13485, preferably with some organization that also has a notified body, because they will just help protect your organization and your liabilities in that 13485 audit. Regarding software specifically around the conformity assessment process, so that's where the notified body would pick up and look at the technical files. I think that's just outside the scope of this presentation, but DQS are running a series around digital health technologies, looking at wearables and nearables, which is an interesting area where, to reduce the data collection on a wearable, you actually have something that's permanently plugged in and monitoring different aspects to get a more holistic data set on a patient, and how that is revolutionizing patient care, including virtual hospitals. So that's something that training series is something we're running at the moment.
Okay, great. And yes, I'm excited to hear how many people might be interested in your proposed masterclass and additional trainings. But let's go to the next question. Vinod asked, apologies if I'm saying your name incorrectly, about 21 CFR Part 820. Do we need to comply with ISO 1345 if you're primarily the US market? I'm just kind of interpreting a little bit here. And I know you touched on this a little bit with MDSAP, but do you want to elaborate a little further?
Yeah, sure. So under the QSR is slightly different, which is the current requirement in the US, but I think it's February 2026, you're moving to the QMSR. And the QMSR incorporates all of the 13485 requirements through reference. So basically, 13485 doesn't meet all of the QMSR requirements because the FDA adds on additional, but the QMSR references 13485, so you would need to comply with all of 13485. And as I mentioned, the MDSAP material already has the 13485 and the US FDA requirements, so nicely aligned into the publications. So that's a really good tool if you're looking to know what you will need to do by February 2026.
Okay, great. Diana asked about a post-certification question. Any tips for maintaining compliance while being lean and efficient? And you sort of went into that a little bit at the end, but any additional tips you have?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you start with the gap analysis, which has got all of the criteria of 13485, and then you link it to your processes, and then you have that tool in audit, it's really helpful, because in your 13485 audit, when we go in, we're just going clause by clause, and we're making sure that you've got the evidence of compliance for each clause. And if you've got a gap analysis which shows which procedure, which document you've addressed that clause in, it can really accelerate the audit. And when it comes to change, because this is where we see probably manufacturers struggling the most, and the change can either be adapting to a new device, a new requirement, a new regulatory requirement, or actually a new quality team. We often see people come in and they implement change, but what they do is they create duplication, they create contradictions, and it becomes very messy, and that's when the quality management system starts to get very heavy, and that's when we will start raising findings because there's contradictions. If you stick to that gap analysis and you basically say, I've got my risk management clauses covered in my risk management procedure, and it's very clear on what part is covering what, when you come to implement change, that's how you would guide what documents to change. When you're bringing in a new team member, that's how you implement training, and you're guarding that knowledge within the company through that gap analysis.
Angela asked if you have a template for this gap analysis, or how could they find that?
Yeah, I mean, so when I was in industry, I did actually use the MDSAP tools a lot because they've got the 13485 and the regulatory requirements. And then, as I mentioned, if you buy the harmonized standard of ISO 13485, that aligns 13485 with the EU requirements, and you can just slot it in. But I know our colleagues in the US, they do have a tool, and they're also offering a service to explain how to implement that tool as well. So if you reach out to the sales.us@DQS, it's the bottom box on this slide, then they will be able to help you.
Okay, so there are a couple of questions about supplier management. I thought I'd like to get to those, and then one other question, and then we'll just kind of wrap up. But Carl asked, regarding supplier management, it's my understanding that we need to have internal supplier quality agreements between divisions, corporate and business units for support functions, supplier management, document control, and sub-assemblies, raw materials provided. How is this best addressed by organizations? And I don't know if you want to zoom out a little bit, because there were several questions about supplier management.
So I think with supplier management, the one thing I would say is it needs to be risk-based. Sometimes you can't just have a one process fits all or one approach fits all. You can have a process, but you need to have a decision tree about what level of interrogation you're going to be. You might have some suppliers where you think you have to go in every 6 months. You might have some products where you're needing to do 100% check. And certainly I've worked in class 3 implantables where some components you need to check everything. You need to be precise in what that device, the components are, so you're getting the clinical outcome that you need. With other suppliers, you don't. Other components, you don't. So you need to really think about what is the impact of that component on my device, on performance, on safety, on the patient. And then you need to work backwards and say, right, what do I feel confident is my supplier evaluation? It's an art to get the balance right. Usually what I see manufacturers with a new supplier, they put in extra layers, and then as they gather a history of compliance with that supplier, they can reduce down the requirements. As I mentioned previously in passing, if your supplier is ISO 13485 certified by an accredited organization, particularly if that organization is part of a notified body, already you can say, well, I've got more confidence that they will actually be meeting the quality requirements. If there's no 13485 certificate and this is a critical supplier, think very carefully. Just one other point, when we are actually looking at your quality management system, we will also assess your critical suppliers, and we might decide that in order to certify your organization, we also need to do supplier audits of those critical suppliers. I've had situations where a manufacturer has had a supplier in an area where we can't send our auditors because of safety reasons. So when you're putting your supply chain together, really, really think about, can my third-party auditor go there? Can I go there to visit that site? And make it easy for yourself. Don't just go for the cheapest on the product basis. Think very holistically about how much it's going to cost to maintain that supplier.
Okay, I think we've basically run out of time. Thank you so much. I want to ask one more, I wanted to run one more poll to see who might be interested in the. Let me. I actually. What would I say? Would you be interested in a deeper dive or a master class from Claire or DQS on this subject? So if you navigate, those of you who maybe didn't get the poll the first time, navigate between chat and Q&A tab. There's that poll tab. You can start answering that if you're interested. Okay, and we will, maybe we can, this is a seed of an idea that Claire had. It's not fully developed, but if you are signing up, or if you're saying, yes, sign me up, what we would be interested in is maybe you could help tell us what it is that you want in this masterclass. So this is something that Claire is currently working on. And so it's something that she would want feedback on how to develop it and what exactly to include. So take that into account, and the people who are most enthusiastic, maybe we will reach out to you if you're not opposed and get some feedback from you.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, Etienne, one of the things that Etienne and I were talking about before this webinar is within a notified body, we have a huge amount of training material because we have to have our auditors as world experts. That's just our brand. That's what we have to do. And what I see coming obviously recently from manufacturing is it feels like that knowledge is quite ring-fenced, And it would be nice to have some of it flow out into the manufacturing space so that firstly, it helps us as notified bodies if you are very well informed, because what you're providing to us to audit is much higher quality. So it makes our lives much easier as auditors. And I think also it will help you as manufacturers because you're really benefiting from that experience that we have. So what I was discussing with Etienne is, if there is a need, if you think that there is really a need for this sort of masterclass approach, and you would like to help contribute to what that content is, please do reach out so that we can actually design that and support you with what you actually need.
All right. Thank you so much, Claire. Really appreciate it. I am going to launch our final survey. It's just tell us what you'd like to see in the future. Did you enjoy this? Did you not, etc. But I want to thank you all for coming. And Claire, thank you so much for the presentation. We'll let you all get back to the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.